Today we're here to talk about the three windows that are at the bottom of the Ogham tract in the Book of Ballymote. Now Ogma, a man well skilled in speech and poetry, invented the Ogham. The cause of its invention, as a proof of his ingenuity, and that his speech should belong to the learned apart, to the exclusion of rustics and herdsmen. In the Middle Ages, Irish monks were required to memorize the Ogham tract. They had to continuously rewrite these letters over and over and over in all of the different fonts that were known, available, and invented at the time. Why are they doing this? So at the bottom of the Book of Ballymote, there's these three windows. There's a square window. There's two circle windows. One of the circle windows has a cross in the center of it with concentric circles, and one of them has a cross in the center of it with C designs, little designs with C's and dots. These are known as the windows at the Book of the Ballymote, right? The one with the squares is the one we're going to start talking about first. It's called Tragsruth for Chertra. So when I attempt to say these words, I'm doing my absolute best. I would rather attempt to say them in the wrong way than not try to say them at all, right? Chertra was the chief poet of Ulster at the time, so it was believed that he is the one who developed this particular window, and it's called Chertra's Footstream, all right? And it's what kind of led us here to understanding how this actually worked. This is what led us to understand that these are following some sort of form, and the form that they draw is actually a vortex. It's a vortex sink. We do a lot of calculations for various things, whether it be hydrodynamics, thermohydrodynamics, just thermodynamics in general, right? Dynamics, the way that these things behave and operate, often because of temperature, often because of viscosity, often because of just the way that two moving things interact with one another. How do they spiral down? Gravity is involved here as well, right? What was being insinuated by these lines? When we say insinuate, remember, insinuate comes from sinus, comes from bay, comes from like what is hidden in the bay, right? So it's what is hidden, the hidden words, the hidden meaning behind things. My son, he said, the words are scrambled for three reasons. First, so they may test the ingenuity of our students in searching out and identifying obscure points. Secondly, for ornamentation and reinforcement of speech. Thirdly, lest mystical matters which should be only revealed to the initiated be discovered easily by base and stupid people. During that time, and even up till now, right, those who were educated were those who were in power, and those who had this secret, sacred information wished to keep it secret and sacred. The purpose of edification and for the concealment of mystical matters resonates with the ideas expressed by earlier figures, hidden from the eyes of the vulgar horde and covered with the veil of modesty, because they sheltered celestial mysteries. The revelation of such mysteries was, of course, the ultimate aim of the kind of scriptural exegesis that could only be carried out by a select group of educated scholars. So there was many things embedded in it, hidden in it, that you'd have to be initiated in order to fully understand, which is why they had them write over and over and over this Ogham tracts, right? And those who were equipped could pick up the hidden meanings, the footpath, right? So I'm a poet. If you guys don't know, I'm a poet, and I've been a poet for my entire life. And one thing that's interesting about poetry, to me anyway, is that poetry has feet, poetry has meter. It's able to walk through space, right? It isn't just a metaphoric, it is a metaphoric, but it isn't just a metaphoric way of describing things. It's also got a musical element to it, a rhythmic element to it. There's punctuation points and notes that hit at certain places, right? And this is part of understanding poetry. Well, poetry was considered divine. And so all of these monks and all of these druids and all of these old Celts who were studying in any way, shape, or form, were transmitting the information from one to another using poetry. They were bards. Bards were a level of initiation within, a high level of initiation within the druidry. So to have this window or these windows at the bottom of the Ogham tract to be named after or invented by great poets is also very telling. This one in particular that we're looking at here is called a Fairtre's Foot Stream. All right. And when I started to look at how these were arranged, I wanted to look at them alphabetically. I wanted to see how they connected to one another. So if we start with the letter B, which is Bieth, the very first letter of the Ogham alphabet, and we trace it down to the next letter, to the next letter, to the next letter, we wind up making a spiral shape. So when I started to follow them around and realized that they were going into this spiral, right, into this vortex, and then when we think about the idea that this is actually a foot stream, it starts to really identify itself as a graph for a vortex sink, right? So we start with Bieth, and it goes to Luis, and then it goes to Fiern, and then it goes to Silel, and then it goes to Nguyen. And it creates this spiral. But then it goes from Nguyen to Huatha. The spiral doesn't stop. It continues, and it goes all the way through Acme Huatha, and then it transfers into Acme Aim. All right, and I think that this is a part that is extremely crucial, where it stops up the information, right? So this is one of those crossing points where I feel like we've crossed over an initiation point by understanding and discovering this, by simply observing something. When the Acme are arranged, traditionally, they put the consonant Acme first. So you have Acme 1, which is Acme Bieth, all right? And then you have Acme 2, which is Acme Huatha. Then they put Acme 3 as Acme Muen, right? Which are the diagonal cross sections. So they're the cross sections to the right, and then the cross sections to the left, and then the diagonal cross sections, and then the vowels where they're perpendicular to each other, the right angles. That's not how it's arranged on Fion's window. That's not how it's arranged here in Furch's footstream. All right, that isn't how this is working. The Acme Aim comes before Acme Muen. That's how we were able to arrange it and turn it into a sine wave. That's how we were able to translate it into these star charts, okay, into these beautiful, beautiful understandings of the universe, because we put them in the correct order, and the order is assigned right here in the next Acme, or in the next window, which is Fion's window, right? And Fion's window is probably the most famous of all of the windows at the bottom. And it's a cross section, right? It looks like almost like a bullseye with a target mark right in the center. And this is telling us everything about the alphabet that we need to understand. And it's called Fion's ridgepole. All right. And when we think about the XY axis, right, and we talk a lot about trigonometry, we're going to talk about calc, right? We're going to talk about plotting and graphing. All of this is a means of measurement. Okay. Yesterday I answered a question on a physics site, and it was like a spoof physics site or something, because it asked if math was universal, the universal constant language, or if it was something that man invented, right? People invented. And I'm going to go with people invented this. We learned to count and we learned to calculate. People developed these ways of doing these calculations and measurements in order to better understand, measure, and calculate natural occurrences. The natural occurrences happen whether we can measure them or not, right? Understanding them is developing a way to calculate correctly what that natural occurrence is going to do. It doesn't know math inherently. Maybe it does, but That's not true, right? The numbers that we today use are an Arabic number system. All right, we don't use Roman numerals. Everyone's familiar with Roman numerals. It's a very inconvenient way to present numbers. All right, the Arabic system is extremely concise, much easier to read. So those are the number symbols that we use nowadays. But I mean, just those two comparisons alone let us know that that's not how numbers were always written, handled, calculated, formed. All right. So we can look at different systems, how different systems calculated different things. This is its own unique system, and it's wonderfully accurate, precisely accurate, right? And so it's telling us within Fion's window that this is the order in which these letters go. They go from the right, Akme Bieth, then they go to the left, Akme Huatha, but then they cross. They cross perpendicularly before they go to a diagonal, right? So you get Akme AM first, then you get Akme Muen. And in between each of these spaces, we've located the forfeta. And we talked about the forfeta. We talked about how there's centrifugal force, centripetal force, there's inverted pressure, right? There's the right angle, there's the cubit. All of these things are written. All of these things are encompassed, and they have a place within this Fion's window that tell us what they do and why they're there. Each space, sine, cosine, tangent, right? And then all the way around. This also helps us understand things like natural alternating current, right? So when we combine this wave form that we find in Fion's window, which is called Fion's ridge pole, okay? Ridge pole, up and down, as if this is where the ridges of the mountains sit and where the valleys exist. So now we have a vortex sink and we have waves that can be converted into a wheel. Then we go over to the next one, which is the Rothogam Royogni Rashtag, the wheel Ogham of Rogni Rashtag, but he was possibly the a figure who was skilled in poetry at the time, in rhetorical speech, which means like Rashkad is the name for a person who is skilled in rhetorical speech or poetry. But I forgot to tell you that Fionn is Fionn Mac McCall, which is one of the greatest ancient Irish heroes, right? And again, poetry all over this, right? So, all right, back to Rothgam Riogani. The Rother is a river, all right? And again, so we have a foot stream, we have a ridge pole, and now we have a river. It's this possibility that when we combine the ridge poles, when we combine the idea of the three-dimensional wavefront, right, and we mix that in with the vortex sink, what we wind up with is a torus. Are you starting to see? So we have this, the first one is the insinuation of a vortex. It's a vortex sink. It's that whirlwind that goes down the drain, right? It's that the wind taking the dust devils up and spiraling them around. It's whirlpools, eddies, all of those things. Centrifugal force, centripetal force. It's things going down a drain, right? It's vortex. It's describing a vortex. The Fion's window is describing a wave. All right, the sine wave. So what is the Ratham Ragani? What is that describing? Well, it's calling itself a river, isn't it? It's describing a torus. Now look at the way that these seas interact with each other. Look at this. Now we're going to put the tree of life over this. Look how well they interact with each other. Look what's happening here. Torrid flow, the vortex that comes back down and recirculates itself over and over. With these three basic principles, with these three basic windows, we can calculate and gauge most of the things that are happening in nature, everything from water to wind to temperature to currents, right, to tides. And that's what gets really, really weird when we start really looking at the fact that these come from the auricept enesis, right? This word that I tried to say at the beginning. Each of these figures, each of these wheels is describing nature. This entire alphabet is handling how to measure it and calculate it to determine what will happen next. Only the most educated of the society would have been able to understand what these things were saying, what they meant. And it was important for the classes to stay segregated in order for those in power to be able to maintain their power. Sounds familiar, doesn't it, right? Don't start me on the No Child Left Behind Act. Don't start me on the American educational system and how when people get power through education, they demand that life is good for them too, and they have the means to do that. Well, that's an evolution of this thought, right? So we know that we talked about the Babylonian, Mesopotamian, Sumerian trigonometry, right? Their 60 base system. And they did that in order to build a civilization that kept certain people on top and kept other people underneath of them working for them. That was the beginning of capitalism. That was the beginning of what we know today as civilization. The civilization, according to the Druid class, right, was meant to keep nature in place. It had a priority to keep the natural cycles in place, to cherish and love the energies that were happening and hold them with high regard. So it wasn't, from what I can tell, to keep people suppressed. It was to keep nature elevated. Okay? There's a big difference here. There's a big difference here. Hi, Bear Bear. So, yes. So they had to be a member of the learned class, and they were called the Philid. All right. Now, all of these things we're talking about are found in what's known as the Scholar's Primer, the Ora Esep Na Neses. Please help me say these words. My mom said that I shouldn't say them and that I have to try, and I need help. So please help me. The Scholar's Primer is how it's often translated. But I thought that was really weird because aura so there's all this layover. There's all this overlay and mixing of Old Irish, Early Irish, and Latin. We took apart this word, right? The auricept, because aura is light. She's the goddess of light, right? Aurora. And that's why we call the lights in the sky the aurora. The Druids have another word, A-U-R. Right? In Old Celtic, there's another word, A-U-R, and it's the light of the moon, the lunar light, right? In the next video, we're going to talk about the Druidic Holy Grail, all right? Because we're going to put some of these ideas and calculations into motion. We're going to put them into the natural setting and learn to understand better how they understood those interactions. I've written about this in my book, Light Range, a little bit, but we're going to focus on that in the next video. But for right now, auricept, like the Scholar's Primer, right? So aura in Old Irish, or A-U-R, is a prefix meaning before or leading to, right? So it's leading to, the acept is a lesson or precept, but it's ultimately derived from the Latin word acceptum, which is like receiving a thing. So it's before leading, leading you to receiving. Leading you to receiving, right? It's an instructional text. And then the na is like plural. So it's multiple of the assess, which is scholar or sage or poet, right? So it's for all of the scholars. It's the primer for all of the scholars, but it's also in some way talking about leading you to the light, which is the aura, right? The light. And this is extremely important for what we're going to talk about in the future, because right now I'm giving you the math first. I'm giving you the calculations, the ability to make these calculations, to start to notice them in the symbols that you're seeing. And as we progress and move through these lessons, we're going to learn how they actually used them. Okay. So yeah, right now it's theoretical. It's like, okay, here's the ingredients, but we're going to use them to make a cake. We're definitely going to use them to make a cake. So when we're talking about, we go back to Fion's window, right? Go back to the sine wave. I go back to the graph here, the star charts, how all of these were found. I was talking to a friend of mine, an acquaintance that I made, and he sent me, I really enjoy his work, and I've been following his website for a long time. And so I noticed that he uses some certain programs. He's an engineer. So I said, could you please, would it be all right? Would you try if we made a wheel with 18-degree segments? If we could we put this wheel that we've translated from Fion's window into modern computer MathCAD and see what it would do with it? You know, like, what does MathCAD think of it? So now we've got the human analysis of it, right? And we why not just try it out here? What does a computer think of it? AI is now based in billions of input statements on each usable topic, but if it doesn't contain a topic conversion of alphabets to numbers, then it is useless. Of course, modern languages have numbers as part of their command structure, but just look at the difference between the Roman numerals and our Arabic numbers, 0 through 9. Decimals came much later. In the computer world, we have ASCII, characters using 128 different letters, numbers, special characters, including some things, one of which looks like a little house. I have attached a cuneiform image showing how the horizontal points varies in length when it is used in different letter codes. It seems to me that the system of horizontal cross lines on a vertical base is more likely to directly reflect numbers. I think of a circle of 18 degrees radii as much a more sophisticated mathematical equation basis, such as the world would need in describing and organizing the planets and perhaps star systems like the Pleiades. I don't believe I have ever seen what our star system would look like if viewed from a distance, but I am sure there is a rendition of it somewhere out there. So he put this circle that we've drawn, the 18-degree segments. The attached image was constructed with the angles of 18 degrees. The trigonometry sine of 18 degrees and equals 0.0 phi times phi equals the square root of phi plus 1 over 2 equals 1.618033989. The radius length was set to 5 for the scale I had in ACAD. Attached is a simple ratio of the area of the smaller green dashed rectangle with the larger green box area sent earlier. This ratio is an exponent of the natural log base equals E equals 2.718281828, and then adjusted for a decimal fourth root gives a number derived at Newgrange Portalblog that connects the entire universe of electrical subjects with phi. The precision here is very high. And with the construction of the circle, it's like phi, well, phi is still in here, right? Any secondary lines connected to this basic diagram will have the lengths and functions of phi and the azimuths of phi, and the angles will be a function of phi. So even with the 18-degree segments, which is each letter of the acme, of the Ogham, phi's all over it. The next video we're going to make is going to be about the Irish Holy Grail, about the Druid Holy Grail, and it has 3 parts, and one of those parts is called the Or, A-U-R, or it could be O-R, like Or. Now remember, we do have a Ogham named Or. It's the spindle, right? And this is extremely important when it comes to this because the spindle is the golden ratio, the 1.6. It's 1.61, but when we're talking about it in this context, we're going to think of it as proportions, right? We're not going to think of it as specific Arabic numbers and modern day calculations that we're familiar with. We're translating it to that. But at this point in time, they didn't have those reference points. They didn't have that vocabulary. This is what they had. This is what they used. And it was a very secret language. Phi is all over it. And we know that this is how the world grows. We know that this is how the universe grows. And we know that they have a specific letter already arranged for this purpose. They've already described it, right? Just like the Greeks. We use the Greek letter to describe phi that looks exactly like the Ogham or. And both of them are describing the fact that the wheel is showing us phi all over the place. The astronomical data for the 2000 epoch is very important to modern astronomy. Naturally, the planets are all changing slightly in centuries, but this number does not. It is the natural logarithm of the orbital elements of time and distance in astronomical units. So when he was doing this chart here, what he found was that the long lengths, right, the green lines and the long lengths, equal 3.07763,835, right? And when he put them into the calculations, he wound up getting the position of Jupiter in the 2000 epoch date. Basically, the precision that is found in this method is astronomically better. He found the natural logarithm of the orbital elements in time and distance in astronomical units using this system. It's pretty precise. It's pretty precise. There was concerns about using modernity, right? Modern computers to figure some of this out because obviously they didn't have modern computers, but what they did have was observation. What they did have was their own minds. And what they did have was an unabridged, unimpeded look at nature and how it was handling and how it was happening, right? And they were keeping track and they were keeping records of this because it was imperative to know when to plant. It was imperative to know when to migrate, when to move, when things were happening, but they are able to see it from outside perspective. And the same thing comes from time, right? We aren't there. We aren't back in time. We don't know what these things were about. And I have a feeling that a lot of the people who were translating it and carrying this information through also didn't know what it meant. We still don't know what it meant, or maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation, you and I. So there was all this time, space, weather patterns, all of these things that they were able to understand just from knowing these calculations. And it's very human to want to do this. Very, very human to want to do this. In the next video, like I said, in the next video, we're going to discuss the Druidic Holy Grail and put into time and space some of these things that we've been learning. I encourage you to take a look at some symbols. Take a look at some symbols with an open mind and see how maybe those symbols might be able to translate to you an idea that nature is trying to tell you. All right, I hope to see you guys again soon, and I'm wishing you all the best. Bye.